Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, FDA approved for over 20 years. So, talk to your specialist to see if Botox Cosmetic is right for you.
For full prescribing information, including boxed warning, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
Remember to ask for Botox Cosmetic by name. To see for yourself and learn more, visit BotoxCosmetic.com. That's BotoxCosmetic.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have just flown under the radar and passed most people by. Today is a special episode for a couple reasons. First of all, happy Halloween. It's almost Halloween, so wanted to talk about a horror episode or a horror movie, but it's also going to be kicking off a new miniseries or a new edition of a miniseries that we've already done. I guess you could call it a level 2 of a miniseries that I did a while back called 8-Bit Cinema, where we're looking at video game adaptations into film, because I have just been very interested in, especially even since we've done it, because I did it a couple of years ago, they were just the dregs of Hollywood for the longest time, and then they slowly but surely started to get better. And since we released that miniseries, now it's like, are they going to replace superhero films? Are they going to be the new big thing? Who knows? But the film, I'll get to the movie I'm talking about, of course, which is 2006's Silent Hill. And joining me, I had to bring in a video game expert, returning guest of the show, one of the co-hosts of the old Switcheroo, J-Mo. How's it going, J-Mo?
Is so good, Derek. It is so good to be back. It is so good to be kicking off spooky season. This was the first horror movie I've watched this year. I don't know. I don't usually start mid-September. I usually wait for October proper. So, you got me in the spooky mood. I mean, have you watched a horror movie yet? Like, not for the podcast or whatever?
This is the first one I'm also watching. I feel like this is when like the spooky goth girls start their holiday watching, but I'm always like a couple weeks behind them.
I'm not counting Beetlejuice. Like, that was not horror. That was comedy horror.
That's fair. Yeah, I actually even haven't seen that one yet. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to talk to you once you see it.
Yeah, I have to check it out.
But yeah, like you said, I am a host of the Old Switcheroo podcast. We're trying to get through all 250 plus retro games in the Nintendo Switch online catalog. We have a little community of people who are coming on and being guests and talking about games that they loved. And Derek was just on with our mutual friend Karosh. They had a Kirby episode drop recently. We covered Kirby Superstar and Kirby's Dream Land 3. So if you're listening to this, I'm guessing you like Derek. And if you like Derek and Kirby, come check out our episode. It's a good time.
Yeah, that was a blast. Like, I loved getting to go and talk to you guys about Kirby, you and Mike. And then, yeah, like you said, I brought Karosh, who has been on this show a couple times. So hopefully people know him as well. And yeah, Kirby's a lot of fun. And I always love being on that show. But I also love having you here. And I just, like I said, I'm talking about video games. This is a movie podcast. I had to get video game podcasters on. This movie, obviously, I should mention that it's directed by Christoph Gans and then written by Roger Avery, starring Rahada Mitchell, Sean Bean, Laurie Holden, and Deborah Kara Unger, along with Jodelle Mika Furland, who plays kind of a triple role of sorts. But yeah, so a lot of talent behind this relatively early video game adaptation. Of course, based on primarily the first Silent Hill, to my understanding, but it takes elements from, I guess, the next couple as well. I'm not huge. I was never a Silent Hill guy. I actually haven't played these games, so that's another reason I wanted to bring on an expert. So before we get into the movie, what's your history with the Silent Hill franchise?
I can't believe you haven't played this.
I know. I was a Resident Evil guy. I'm sorry.
Oh, Oh my God. Okay. All right. What's the opposite of did we just become best friends meme? It's
Did
like,
we just become worst enemies?
yes. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I like this Resident Evil series. And Silent Hill wouldn't exist without it. But yeah, it's such a cinematic and special series in my mind. It was one of my first gaming obsessions. I read about it in GamePro magazine, if anyone
Oh
remembers
wow.
that old chestnut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounded spooky the way they were
Mhm.
describing it. And then I remember I saw it at Hollywood Video. Which and it's an extinct. I mean, I guess all VHS rental services are extinct at this
Mhm.
point. But yeah, I just picked it up, popped it in the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, and my brothers and I did not know what we were in for. There's this one infamous scene in the locker room, and Silent Hill fans, if you're listening, you'll remember this scene where the jump scare in this locker room is so good and built up so expertly, it sent myself and my brothers screaming from the room. We left the controller there, left the disc spinning because we had to GTFO.
Very nice.
I've been
Yeah.
with Silent Hill since literally the beginning. I've played and beaten almost all of them, and it's my favorite quirky, weird, uncomfortable, kind of sexy horror series. Like there's
Mm,
so many layers to it.
yeah. So I
What
think
about
it for me, yeah, because I think my excuse is that I was a Nintendo kid. I only had Nintendo systems, so I didn't get a PlayStation 3 until I was in college, and then eventually I went back and played some of the games that I'd missed. But yeah, if it wasn't on Resident Evil 4 being on GameCube or something like that, I missed it. So I think that these ones were Konami games. They were only on PlayStation. Am I wrong or?
Yeah, I played. So my favorite of the series is Silent Hill 2, which is about to
Hmm.
get a lot of attention this year. It's going to get a remake. I've led to believe there's going to be a new Silent Hill film this
Yeah,
October, Derek.
with this director coming back, is
Do you have
he's
plans?
coming.
I want to go
I,
see it.
let's go. Let's do it.
Yes. Can you imagine if on the podcast everyone he rejected me? He's like, oh, I'll let you
Uh,
know.
I'll see what I'm doing that day.
Yeah, so I was not a Sony person. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm still not primarily. I don't have a PlayStation 5. I'm more of an Xbox Series S kind of person.
Right.
But I fell in love with the series and became obsessed with it when Silent Hill 2 was re-released on the Xbox for a
Mhm.
release called Restless Dreams, which was also cool because they added new story to it. So it was really like kind of one of those Spider-Man 2.1 scenarios,
Right.
where you get a little bit more story, but it's not a prequel. Yeah, and it's been on Xbox. It's not. Has it had a Nintendo appearance? Yes, it did on the Wii.
Okay.
Yeah, which was also a remake of this first game story, which is kind of what this movie is.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I think that the silent I was it was always something that was in my periphery, but I was never really locked into either the movie or the games of Silent Hill. And when I went back and rewatched all these video game movies, a lot of them, like I said, from this era, from before, let's say before Detective Pikachu, they're not the greatest thing. And if you look at the reviews for this movie is not get good reviews. Like I feel like it's kind of a perfect storm for a film to get bad reviews because it did okay at the box office, like not great, but pretty good. But it's a horror movie and B a video game adaptation that was released in 2006. And critics are not gonna like that. Like no video game movie got a positive Rotten Tomatoes score until 2019 in Detective Pikachu.
Is that true?
That is absolutely true. Yeah,
Wow.
not a one. And some of them got close, but that was the first one. And since then, there've been like 6 or 7. So that's kind of like that was like the dam bursting. But yeah, and I think a big part of it is that these adaptations were not attracting talent. It was kind of like a self-fulfilling. It was like video game movies are bad, so we hire people who don't care about them to direct them, and because they're bad, people who are like good don't come to direct them. But then, for some reason, this crazy French director, he directs Brotherhood of the Wolf, this like artsy, weird French movie that's like I guess horror. I haven't seen it, but like I know it's people like that movie a lot. He's like, yeah, I love Silent Hill. I want to do this movie. So instead of going to like fucking what's his name, W.S. Anderson or fucking U.A. Boll, who were the guys who were making all the bad video game movies at the time. Like I know some people like some of those Anderson movies. I really do not at all. Like, I'm sorry. So when I went to watch this one, I was like expecting, Resident Evil 1, something like that. At best, maybe Resident Evil 3, which is not good, but it's fun. It's done by the guy who did Highlander. But no, like, this is actually like a well-made movie that is like doing, it's like my favorite kind of horror where it's just like, it's like fucked up, but like really in a cerebral way. Like, you're seeing intense things, but like, the monsters aren't necessarily they're just there. They're just monsters. The people are the real horror, right? Like, you might be
Right.
afraid to get like chopped by, and I'm talking about the movie now, so I don't know if the game's the same, but like, you might be afraid to get chopped by Pyramid Head, who's iconic. I recognize him from the games. But really, the real bad guys are these religious zealots. So, what did you think of, like, how did this movie work for you as both a movie, like a horror movie, and as an adaptation of these games, which you liked?
I have so much to say about this. Like,
Please. I know you took
I
like 8 pages of notes, so I
8
want to
pages
hear
of
it.
notes. Yeah. So I did not love this movie when it came out.
Mhm,
I liked it. I remember admiring a lot of the stuff it attempted. Didn't hit for me.
mhm,
Rewatching it for this podcast, blown away by this movie. This movie, okay, so first of all, like, I think that this movie did badly and has a bad reputation because it is full of bad line delivery.
yes.
Okay. But notice I didn't say bad acting. There's phenomenal acting in this movie
Mhm.
with the way that the characters express pain and torture and frustration. There's a lot of really believable emoting. And then it cuts straight to the next scene, and the character's like, I'll fight the demon. Where is this demon? And I'm not saying that deliberately that bad to be mean. That's like the line delivery for a lot of this. Was that a translation thing? Weren't a lot of these actors from primarily French speakers?
I know the director was a French speaker. I know the actors were international, but primarily from the English-speaking countries. Like, Rahada Mitchell is Australian. Obviously, Sean Bean is English. Laurie Holden is, I guess, Canadian. But yeah, so Deborah Kara Unger, where is she from? She might be from. Oh, she's Canadian too. So yeah, not Americans, but English speakers. But
Right.
I think that there was a lot of stuff where, because the director would apparently like wrote the outlines in French and then it got translated and sent to Roger Avery, who is an American, and he had to write. So that might be it. Because the script isn't bad, but like maybe there is something that got lost in the translation between the director and the screenwriter.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it. But if you have the open-mindedness necessary to be like, can a movie be good with bad line delivery?
Mm.
Absolutely, it can. This is that
Yeah.
movie. And I think that this movie came out way too soon. I mean, I don't know if you want to get
Mm.
into like why we don't think this was successful, but like there is so much in this movie that is the language of the games.
Mhm.
Beat for beat, shot for shot, concept for concept. When I was taking my notes, I was like, "Oh, this reminds me of other games in the series." And then I realized my head is thinking of this as one of the games. It syncs that much up with it, and it hurts it in terms of a film, but makes it a better movie for fans, I would say.
Mhm.
And I think fan culture has gotten so much stronger in the past 18 years that I think if this movie came out today relatively unchanged, I think it'd be celebrated.
Yeah, and I had a very similar experience with you, because I watched this movie. When I first watched it, I was like, I respect this movie. It's doing something different. It's '06. It's still a little dated. Some kind of characters just show up for like we need to have this character. I was like, it's interesting. They're trying something, but it's not amazing. And then rewatching it this time, it jumped up like a whole star in my lit. I went from like a 2.5 to like a 3.5 when I watched it on Letterboxd for this time. And I was like, because I was like interested to talk about it. I was like, okay, as like, like this piece of a larger story in video games becoming like a respected, adaptations becoming a respected thing. Now you have your Fallouts and your Last of Us, and I know those are TV shows, but there's also just big movies that are making hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office as well. Like, I was like, this is just like an important first step. And like watching this time, I'm like, no, this is like a legit good movie. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of it comes down to the respect that they have for the source material, like you said. Whereas before, there was never really any respect given to the source material because it is a totally different medium. That is one of the big hurdles of making a good video game adaptation is telling a story in film in like a 2 hour chunk is so different than here's an interactive thing that you have to do over the course of 30 to 40 hours. It's so
Yeah.
different. So when you make that app, you have to change some things. But this really retained the spirit, that retained a lot of the emotional beats. I feel like even me not having played it, I could feel this respected where it came from, as opposed to, I mentioned Uwe Boll, how he's like, I do a lot of video game movies because people know them. It's just a way for me, like I don't play games, it's just IP that people recognize. Even once again, I don't mean to keep beating up on them, but those old Resident Evil movies have fuck all to do with Resident Evil other than there's zombies in them, right? I remember when I first played Resident Evil 4, I was like, oh, so this is like a post-apocalyptic thing because that's what all those fucking movies are, and it's like, nope, that's just some bullshit they came up with the third and like the sequels to the Resident Evil movies. But this is like, and reading more and more about it, I'm like finding out that they brought on like the score, which I was like listening to, it's like, this sounds like a PS1 fucking score. They used the score from the games, They brought in the sound designer from the games. I think at one point they even make a sly reference to the Konami code. Like there
Oh,
is, right? Did you
yeah.
catch that?
It wasn't. I was watching. I rewound it a couple
Yeah,
of times, and it wasn't, but it definitely was made you think of
right.
it. The left,
Yeah,
left, right, right moment.
yeah, because it's
Um,
not exactly right, but you're like thinking of like, oh, this is
she
a
doesn't say
Konami
like
game.
BA start. You know what
Right,
I mean?
yeah.
Like,
Like if the room she had gotten to was like room BA or whatever.
right. And then she's like, "Let's start."
Right, because like I feel like stuff like that can kind of take you out of it if you're not familiar with the source material, because you're just like, what was that? Why did they do that? Like there was a couple times in Uncharted, I'm just like, why is he doing this? I guess it must be something from the game.
Okay.
But as somebody who isn't familiar with these games, it completely worked for me as just a really good fucking horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you're kind of like that because it would be hard for me to separate this between my love for Silent Hill and my love for this game because it's so similar. It's such a dedication. I guess the director like personally pitched his idea,
Mhm.
basically begged Konami to let him do this, and then they like gave it the green light because he just seemed to care that much. And yeah, there's so many little Easter eggs in the background. I don't know if you want to hear some of them, but like
Yes, please.
it's like so like I mean the graffiti tunnel at the beginning has Cheryl painted on the wall. Well, Cheryl's the little girl from the first Silent Hill game who goes
Oh.
missing. They changed from Cheryl to Sharon. It's the same character.
Mhm.
And then there's the word wolf. Well, Claudia Wolf would be the villain of the second movie and the villain of Silent Hill
Mhm.
3. So just it's mostly little words in the background like that. There's a part where Sean Bean's character, and I mean Sean Bean's so good.
Great.
Like
By the way,
I'll
like
get it.
small aside, I love that on the description for this on Hulu, it like lists where like what all the movies. It's like this actor from this movie, Sean Bean, National Treasure. I just was like, fuck yeah, he's from National Treasure. Sorry, keep going.
No, 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 you're right though. But okay, so are we full spoilers?
Yeah, full spoilers.
Okay, so but if you're listening though, go watch Silent Hill and come
Yes.
back because like I kind of feel like there's moments you kind of need to experience in this movie,
Hmm.
but it's the best twist of all is that Sean Bean survives.
Right.
That
Yes.
guy,
He's never in any danger in the entire movie.
emotional danger,
Yes, that's
and
true.
and
That's fair.
and there was the gas from the coal mine. Like he could have gotten sick,
That's fair.
but yeah, it's just it's really cool because little references like oh sorry so my point was that he visits this archives in
Mhm.
Brahms and Brahms is like the canonical town next to Silent Hill.
Right, yeah, and the cop is like it says Brahms Police Department on her shoulder, like on her little
Yes,
thing. So there's a lot of that stuff. So I did pick up on that. I thought that was cool.
but like that's just the MCU now. It's like you see these movies and the
Mm,
first thing you do when you get home, okay, Guardians of the Galaxy Easter eggs. What I miss? Oh, that's from it, right?
right, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's another thing where I say like I think this movie came out ahead of its time because that'd be a whole BuzzFeed article about that.
yeah,
Silent Hill Easter eggs in this, and I don't remember that being a thing. Fandom hadn't really become that obsessed yet.
yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying, and I think I know what you mean. Saying this movie came out of ahead of its time is true, but I think partially the reason it came out ahead of its time is because if this is the reason those movies were able to come out later, these video game movies were able to come out later, is because of this movie. I think this is like a really vital first step into getting, because like this is the first, like, Roger Avery at the time, maybe not so much anymore, at the time was a very respected screenwriter. You know, like
Yeah.
he had written pulp fucking fiction with Quentin Tarantino. And then you have this like artsy fucking French director, instead of just getting like whatever Eurotrash is gonna fucking direct your movie, you get some actual talent behind the screen. And except for Sean Bean, everyone at least gave the games a try. Like everyone was trying to play them. All of the cast, a lot of them didn't get very far. A lot of them were like, "This game is fucking me up," but they really like Laurie Holden, who plays the police officer Sybil Bennett,
Sybil.
who, by the
Yeah.
way, thank you, is fucking great. She fucking rules so hard. She was like, "Okay, I got to my scene in the game where my character shows up. I understand. I'm good now." So they all really put in the work. There was no lip service done to this, and now you're getting shit like fucking Keanu Reeves as Shadow the Hedgehog in Sonic 3. You know, this movie walked so that shit could run.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I also, my other hot take of this movie is that I feel like there is a very simple cut of the film that would make it have done so much better, and that's put the credit sequence at the beginning. Because the
Mm,
credit sequence is rocking and you got these characters and it's
right.
kind of campy, but it's also messed up. And it's like I feel like a lot of people went into this with like a different tonal expectation.
Hmm.
Silent Hill as a series was heavily inspired by the movie Jacob's Ladder. Are you familiar with it?
It's one of those movies that's been in my watch list for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do know of Jacob's Ladder and like its reputation and stuff.
Right. So I think a lot of people were expecting very like long scenes that lead to nothing, slow tension,
Hmm.
and maybe a couple of scares that really get under your skin. That's Silent Hill, especially Silent Hill 2.
Hmm.
So I think if you go into this expecting to just be scared, like this is not the scariest horror movie I've seen by any stretch of the imagination,
Hmm.
but it's one of the more imaginative. It's one of the more visually memorable, one of the more disturbing horror movies I've ever seen. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure we'll
that was
get to it, but
exactly the word I had in my notes. Is legit disturbing.
and that is Silent Hill. There
Hmm.
are just these moments where you're just like, "Oh my God, what am I doing? I gotta press A and reach into what?" Like there's a corpse strung up on the wall, and it's it says I dare you with an arrow pointing into his mouth,
Hmm.
and you just know the key is inside that mouth,
Right.
and this movie handles that scene perfectly. I mean, can I start gushing about specific scenes?
Please.
So this scene is so great. This is Rose, the protagonist's first real interaction with Silent Hill. The first one, she gets attacked by these like ashen babies.
That
It's
shit was
like,
freaky. Yeah.
oh my God, I somehow completely forgot about the ash baby attack.
Hmm.
But it's disturbing because the history of this town is that this whole town caught on fire from this coal mine underneath it, and everyone basically got baked alive. It's
Hmm.
really messed up, and this is based on a real town called Centralia, Pennsylvania, where the fire is still burning to this day. Like you can't go
Hmm.
visit it because it's too dangerous, but
Hmm.
you can go to the border of Centralia right now. It's a real life place where this really happened, and the world warps around her
Hmm.
in a really amazing, I think, visual effect. The paint peels rapidly, rust runs down the walls like blood. And you said you never played the games, right?
I never did. Yeah. No.
Okay, well, so like with the video game, you kind of cheat. You have a loading screen. You make the screen
Hmm.
go dark, and then it comes back, and now it's messed up. Nowadays, the games will mimic this movie's interpretation of the when the world transforms.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, did that hit for you visually?
Oh yeah, that was really cool. I honestly, like I said, found this movie, like the visual, just like it's not like jump scary, like I'm terrified horror. It's just my favorite kind of horror, which is this shit is whack. This shit is fucked up. Like watching all the like weird, horrific shit that was going on, and like I said, I really like that the awful people are just these religious zealots, these people who want to burn a kid alive, and it's not like, okay, like this monster's scary, is gonna get you, but that's not the really horrific shit in the movie. The really horrific shit is like just the disturbing, weird, awful stuff you're seeing. And I love that scene where it's right after Sybil experiences this for the first time, and she walks out and she's like, "What the fuck?" Because like you are feeling the exact same way. So yeah, like the whole look of this movie is so spectacular, and I was looking it up too, doing my research on this movie, because this movie comes out in 2006, so it comes out at a time when it's really at that nexus point between movies being shot on film and movies being shot digitally. And what I love about this movie, because I was watching it and I could be like, I love when a horror movie is kind of grainy. It looks like, it makes it feel just a little bit more unnerving and disturbing. And especially when you kind of compare, because you've got like the bright sunny world that is the real world or whatever that Sean Bean is in, and it's not always sunny, but like it's clearly like, here's the real world and it's got more color, and then here's the like washed out reds and blue, like light blues and stuff like that horror world, and that really comes into effect in that great last scene. But you can see all the film grain in that, and it looks so spectacular because this movie was shot on Super 35, and it looks fucking fantastic. Except the scenes that were very, very dark, they shot on digital HD because it was not going to look good on Super 35. So what that does, like a lot of times when you watch a movie, you're like, okay, I like this like style of film, like Oppenheimer looks good because it's shot on film, but you might not be able to do some certain things. Or like, this is a movie that was shot, like Sin City, that's a movie that was shot a couple years before this or a year before this. Digitally, you could never do that movie on film. This is really taking the best of both worlds. It's like, for the scenes that we can't shoot on that grainy 35, we need to have digital to capture the images to be able to put in, something scary digitally. We're going to do that. So it's really, I feel like a lot of times directors will just die in a hill. They'll just be like, okay, this is the way I want to shoot my movie, and that's it. The fact that they were able to do both makes it that much more unique, I think.
This episode is brought to you by Opill, the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill available in the U.S. Opill is FDA approved, full prescription strength and estrogen-free. Plus, there's no prescription needed. Finally, the days of needing a prescription for birth control are over. Opill is available online and at most major retailers. Take control of your health and reproductive journey with Opill. Birth control in your control. Use code BIRTHCONTROL for 25% off your first month of Opill at Opill.com.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Yeah, it really serves this movie well. And so, I mean, I'm guessing you probably watched the movie if you're listening to this, dear listener. But like, Silent Hill is such a compelling and all-encompassing horror genre in my mind, because I can run away from Jason. Right. Jason's got a machete. I can run away. He's pretty slow. I'm not that old yet. Freddy. Okay, yeah, you can't fall asleep. That sucks. That one's really stressful. Silent Hill. We'll send you to freaking hell. You're in hell. Yeah, you escaped the monster. You're still laying on rusted barbed wire as heat billows from the furnaces of hell beneath you, and like there's no safety until the freaking gods decide to go easy on you and teleport you back to not the real world. You get to go back to the foggy limbo where stuff still sucks, but it's not like Hellraiser bad.
Yeah.
And teaching me about how they shot them on different types of film and different cameras and different qualities. That's really interesting, because I remember watching this thinking like, why can I see so clearly in the dark scenes? Mm-hmm. The dark scenes, you never squint in your eyes. You kind of always understand exactly what you're looking at. That's not really how darkness works. And I think if this movie has one big miss, it's that they didn't play with flashlights and shadow and light as much as they could, because Silent Hill fans know that's what makes those games so scary. You are in a pitch black hallway and you've got this little flashlight and everything's casting ominous shadows, and you just hear this bang coming from down the hall, and it's the scariest thing because of the slow burn. And I feel like there's some scenes, like maybe the nurse scene. There's this scene where the protagonist needs to kind of, what was that called, a jungle gym or a gymboree? You have to snake your way, right? What were those called? Jungle gyms?
Jungle gyms, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like a net of pipes, and you just climb through it. I don't know if those are still a thing, kids, but it was a big thing in the 90s. So it's all of these disturbingly sexy zombie nurses who, they can't see anything, but they can hear you and feel you. And it's just a crowd of like 40 of them standing in a hallway. So the protagonist needs to snake her way through these without touching any of them. And I'm just imagining that scene in darkness would have been more effective, because you'd be like, oh my God, is she going to brush against it? Is one next to me? But I mean, again, though, it's nitpicky because, like,
but then you wouldn't get the shot of the weird nurse zombie cleavage, which they was for some reason prominently featured.
Well, okay, so if I can, because I'm going to gush a lot of love on this game.
I do know that's something from the games. I do know that the zombie cleavage is like an iconic image. From the nurse zombie cleavage is an iconic.
It's eye-catching, you got to admit. It's very Resident Evil don't have that. I mean, not yet anyway. Resident Evil 6 gets a little sexy, I'm told. But so it's like in Silent Hill 2, and all the Silent Hills, but especially Silent Hill 2, the monsters are manifestations of humanity's anxieties, our lies, our sins. Silent Hill 2 primarily focuses on the story of a man who is frustrated by his wife, who is a paraplegic, basically. Like, she's bedridden, she's dying, just not fast enough. And it's ruining his life because he wants to be a good husband, but like he's not having sex, he's not having fun, he never goes anywhere. His life becomes this caretaker. That's not the life he signed up for. Which is crazy because this is the plot of like a video game. You know what I mean?
This is like a horror video game from like 2002 or something.
I mean, I'm really interested to see, because apparently this new Silent Hill movie coming out is based on that game. So I'm very curious how much of this they go into. But the nurses with the cleavage are a manifestation of his sexual frustration.
Interesting.
And so them being booby in this movie doesn't really make sense. Like, this movie is pretty decidedly unsexy.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. But I want to circle back, though. This is the most disturbing segue I've ever done. We never finished talking about Colin, which is the bathroom monster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Derek, you want to describe it?
No, you go for it. You go. It's all you.
Right. He, in life, rapes a little girl.
Yeah.
Like,
and
that's the plot.
I will say, I like the way that they handle that scene, because there's nothing graphic or disturbing. It just implies it. You understand what is happening, and they don't, like, that was one of my problems with, for example, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I really did appreciate the way they did it, because that was one of my problems with, for example, Blink Twice. Is that movie? It literally starts with a trigger warning. It's very graphic. And I get why some people think that's important to have in a movie. I don't think that it's important to be very graphic when it comes to this thing. And it's like, okay, you understand. It's just with the just language of film telling you this horrible thing happens. No one ever says the word rape. No one ever like says anything about it. You just understand what happened to this little girl, and it's another horrific thing that has happened with her life. But they don't make it a dwell on it, make it like this drawn out like rape fucking scene or anything. Like, they just, I don't even necessarily like it, we're talking about it more than the movie even did, So like, I think it was very well handled. But sorry, continue.
No, I completely agree. And like, it's a horrific thing to tell your audience. You don't need to show your audience.
Yeah.
But that's the point in the story, the backstory of the movie, where this little girl is now going to be punished because she is clearly unclean, because her father was born out of wedlock, and now you've tempted this grown man, and it and she's cast for death by this religious cult, and it's the most unfair, horrific concept that you're just watching play out in front of you, and you, the audience, can't do anything about it. But earlier in the film, we see the pedophile, the sexual abuser, in his punishment form, and he is strung up in this incredibly imaginative pose where his ankles are bound together and then twisted up over his own head, so it's almost like his scorpion tail of his legs. And it's all, he's forced into that contortionist pose through barbed wire, and he can only move by crawling with his hands. And the actor who plays him, or I should say the dancer, I don't know if you knew this, but like most of the monsters were played by dancers.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I didn't know that, but that checks out.
The director wanted to get dancers because like the movement of the creature is what makes it memorable. So that wasn't CG. That was a full-on guy bent in that position, crawling towards the camera. Yeah, and he's doing this incredibly disturbing tongue flicker. The actor's like, and I know this isn't a video, but everyone can picture what that looked like. It wasn't good. And at the time, you're like, what? Because with this weird, horny bathroom ghost, and you're like, oh, he's like in pervert hell because of what he did to the new underworld queen of this world.
Right.
But my last gushing thing to say about that scene is that when the protagonist is reaching into his mouth and when he's a corpse to get the key, he doesn't bite. That's not when the scare happens. You let that moment go by and the actress like starts to like vomit from disgust. And then the world shift. And then you're like, oh my God, that thing from earlier is moving. That is so upsetting. Get out of the room. And I loved Rhoda Mitchell's reactions. There's a scene where she collapses in the hall and just freaking cries because she's in hell. What would you do?
Right. Yeah. I think both those scenes you brought up are really great examples of what this movie does particularly well, because like I said, there's not jump scares. They're not like nothing just kind of like jumps out. He doesn't bite her or anything like that. It's just fucking, you're just like, it just kind of gives you the hibbly jibblies. You know what I mean? It sends the shivers down your spine. And I love that, like at that scene when you meet that guy, he's just a weird, creepy monster. But then when you get the context, when you get that flashback, and you're like, oh shit. And then at the end, when you see, the little girl come back and she's using the barbed wire, you're like, cool, good, you fucking got this guy, and now you're getting all these fucking other people. So it's just like, it gives you just the lore in bits and pieces, and a lot of the times, not at all. There's a lot of shit that is just straight up not explained in this movie. And I love it when a movie does that, when a movie's just like, here's this weird, fucked up world. We're going to tell you some stuff, but some of it, you don't even know. A lot of it's left ambiguous and weird. And, to touch back on the other scene you were talking about, that I think was especially for my first viewing, but it's something that also stuck with me on rewatch, that scene when she's kind of jungle gymming her way through all the sexy nurses or whatever. And
it's a great sentence. Jungle gymming his way through the sexy nurses. Underrated movie podcast. I'm sorry.
Put that on the poster. But,
there you go.
But it's the tension is so high in that scene, right? It's all about like just watching it and hoping like she can get through. And because the setup is really good too, because they give her this like lantern thing, and the light is both the only way for her to like progress, but it's also the thing that is going to draw these monsters to her. And she gets to a point where she has to put down the light and is going to have to be literally and figuratively in the dark from here on out so that she can get past these monsters. And then she slips by, and there's never like a one big moment, but like they start to kind of twitch and they're cutting and they're doing all these things. She's like, fuck, and she just has to get out of there. That I think is one of the absolute most memorable scenes in the movie. There is a lot of really great, horrific shit throughout this movie that if you are like, don't have a strong stomach, if you are like not somebody who is a horror fan, I can get why this movie might not appeal to everyone.
Okay, so I'm gonna overpraise that scene, or maybe I figured something out and this director is actually really, really good. But that scene is interesting because it's her, the female protagonist, snaking her way through all the sexy nurses. I mean, in some ways, we're all doing that. When she starts to brush against them, they start to swing wildly with their little knives, and they're stabbing each other. Yeah. The nurses F each other up. And I'm like, what an interesting feminist commentary about like why women need to support women. But we're laughing. But then the climax of this movie, it's all about this motherly figure, this priestess
Mhm.
who betrays the young women under her care. And and it's about Dahlia's guilt for letting her little girl be tortured by this religious cult for something that wasn't her fault. So like there is sort of a message of like women can't fight women because then it's just hell or something. Like women need to support each other. I don't know, Derek. Am I way off?
No, I don't think you are at all, because I think this movie has a lot of feminist themes running through it about just kind of like what femininity even means, like the themes about motherhood and matriarchy and a lot of the antiquated ways that they're like kind of negative sides of motherhood that is kind of represented in this priestess character, and then the positive sides that you have in her actual mother, who is, I mean, she's more in the middle, but she does clearly care about her child, but lets her kind of be sucked into this. But then you have her adopted mother, the female protagonist we were talking about, Rose. But then you also have this motherly protector figure in Sybil, who is she's in a role that is traditionally very masculine. She's a cop, a badass cop. Like I said, she's one of my favorite characters in the movie. She fucking rules whenever she shows up. She has a really horrific death, but she's just like, fuck you guys at the end. So it is not an accident that almost every single character is female. Like like we said, there's like people in the background that are male, and there's Sean Bean, of course. There's the whole not side story, but like kind of like otherworldly story with Sean Bean, who plays her husband Christopher, and then Kim Coates, who plays Officer Thomas. They actually those two males, that whole storyline only exists in the movie because of a studio note that was like, where are the men? There's too many girls in your horror movie.
No
Which
way.
is, yep, that's exactly right. And which is really fucking dumb, in my opinion, because you would never get the opposite of that. Like, if this movie was all men, like, no studio exec would be like, hey, where's all the women? Like, but this movie, it is so strongly, there's so many themes of feminine and femininity, and what does that mean, and motherhood, and the matriarchy, and like, she kind of, in the same way that the cop takes a role that's usually done by a male figure, a priest is usually a male figure too. And so it's like the good and the bad of like slipping into the patriarchy. Not that I'm saying cops are good, but in this movie, this is a good cop. There's not all cops are bastards in Silent Hill.
You're saying Inspector Thomas Gucci is not a bastard?
Yeah, I guess he's cool too. Like, but I do like that. I think they ultimately took that studio note and did something good with it, because I do like that, like, okay, here's all the women in this kind of like hell world, and there's these guys that are existing in this other literal plane of existence, and as well-intentioned as they might be, they can't really get to them. They can't reconnect at the end, and it does provide an interesting duality. Like, I love when it was like, I smell my wife's perfume, and it'll cut back and forth. So I think it has a lot to say on being a woman and womanhood, despite the fact that this is a movie written, directed by two men. I think it still is very, it's very 2016, but like, I think this is a very feminist film.
I mean, I didn't really occur to me before until we started talking about it, but like, I'm actually glad then that the dude bro scenes were put in. Not that the studio was right, but also like now I'm viewing it as like, okay, that's the gender metaphor of like the well-meaning men who don't really know what's going on. God damn it, they're trying. They're looking up the files. They're having conversations. They're really concerned, and they just don't know what women are going through. The hell of being a woman. But we have to talk about Kim Coates as that's Inspector Thomas Gucci.
Yes.
He has some of the most hilariously bad line reads that I literally had to back up and watch over and over again. There's a scene where it's the real world. Sean Bean is looking for his missing wife and adopted child, and it's raining, and he walks up to Inspector Thomas Gucci. And the line read is, I swear he says it like this: Inspector Thomas Gucci, enjoying the weather, are ya? And it's just And the way he said it was like, "Oh, this is supposed to be your cool A, enjoying the
Mhm.
weather, all right?" It was like
Yeah.
he didn't nail the line at all, and they just kept going. And if you watch that scene again, Derek, Sean Bean will actually get frustrated and talk over Kim Coates. And Kim Coates, the actor playing Thomas Gucci, will like mumble and trail off. He doesn't get to finish his lines, and you can tell it was not intentional. He was just having a bad day on set, and they kept it. But then I went further down the rabbit hole, Derek. I'm like, wait, what if Kim Coates is an amazing actor and the concept is an inspector who's a total pushover, and people like actually talk over him in care?
Right.
I just, I love everything about this movie, Derek. I don't know what happened.
It's very, and I think, yeah, you bring up an interesting point about the kind of line reading, and something that I had a problem with initially, and it did rub me a little bit on the rewatch, is that characters just kind of show the fuck up, like whenever they're needed and stuff. Like when they get to the hotel, and Annie's there, and she's like, "I'm throwing rocks at her, and I'm gonna hang out with you guys until I get killed 5 scenes later because you need me for exposition." And then you're like, "All right." It's like, I'm like, it was clear to me that I was like, this was a huge first step, but they hadn't figured everything out about changing a video game into a movie. There was still some adaptation weirdness that you wouldn't get in like a Fallout or something. And to be fair, you still get that kind of stuff in like even like today, like in Borderlands. I would say Borderlands feels behind this movie in terms of but video game adaptations. I think, and that movie is getting torn apart. I think it's getting. I don't think it's a good movie, but I think
You
it's a
seen it?
better movie. You haven't seen Borderlands, or
No.
Okay, it's totally, it's a C minus of a movie.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Kate Blanchett is always great. It looks like Borderlands, and I think that if Borderlands had come out instead of in 2024, in the year of our Lord 2006, people would be like, "This is the greatest video game adaptation we've ever fucking seen. This is so accurate. Fucking Claptrap is annoying as hell, just like in the fucking games. Jack Black is great at being annoying in this movie. Like, it doesn't follow the beats of things, but man, this really looks like Borderlands." But
Okay.
now we're fucking spoiled, right? We're getting used to like The Last of Us and Fallout, and I didn't even like the new Mario movie that much, but like it still made like a fucking $2 billion or whatever the hell it made. We are just so spoiled in terms of our video game adaptations that when something like Borderlands comes out, people just fucking rip it a new one. And like you said, I think if you do the switch, if this movie comes out in 2024, it is beloved.
This is like a really weird sci-fi premise of like movie producers who time travel movies to when they should have come out. And that's like the
Right.
big con or whatever. So what's interesting though is that going back to the video games, that character of Anna, the religious zealot who's just being mean to Dahlia for exposition. Let's be honest, it's just exposition. The character is not important, but it is very much a Silent Hill character. Every Silent Hill game, you meet these troubled women. And some men, but primarily women, who will have some kind of haunting way about them. They're a little off, and you don't quite know if you can trust them. I love when she's picking up her stuff, and the protagonist just takes her knife and goes, "I'm keeping this." And like, you just met this person, you're robbing them of their knife, but yeah, of course you are. They're being really weird. Like, give me that. And of course, she needs it. She needs the knife to solve the video game puzzle of the hidden room behind the painting. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like National Treasure, Indiana Jones, secret rooms and stuff. It's like you don't see secret rooms in movies anymore. Like, right? Movies used to be more fun. I don't know. But let's talk. I mean, can we get into Pyramid Head? Because we haven't really touched on him yet.
Yes, please. Let's talk about him. Icon of the games.
Icon of the games. He was originally primarily a manifestation of guilt, but also there's like portraits in the game that show that he's known as like the Punisher and the Fiend and like the Court of the Warden. Pyramid Head in the lore shows up when you deserve to suffer and you want to suffer because you need to get through something horrible you've done.
Okay.
Pyramid Head will torment you. And Anna, I mean, I'm guessing she had some unresolved baggage because like her death at the hands of Pyramid Head is wild.
Yeah.
He picks her up and carries her by her throat. And the actress who plays Anna is kicking and screaming and fighting for her freaking life. And I'm guessing it's probably a bodybuilder who just fallen and held up a stunt woman, right? It doesn't look CG.
No, I think it was practical.
Yeah, so
As far as I could tell.
he's holding up this woman who's kicking and screaming, and this is going to be disturbing, just so everybody knows. But like, that's the language of this movie, and that's
Hmm.
the language of the games. He rips with one hand, he rips all of her clothes off, and like the protagonist reacts like, "Oh God, like what's about to happen in front of me?" And then Pyramid Head grabs the skin of her naked chest, balls it up with the sheer force of his hand, and rips all of her skin off her body like it's clothing
Hmm.
and then throws her skin coat right as the door to the church closes and it splashes the protagonist. Derek, that scene is like 20 seconds long. I felt like it was a lifetime of watching this poor woman because she's so helpless. It's so disturbing. It goes there in a way you're not expecting.
Yeah, there's some really horrific shit, and Pyramid Head, like I said, is one of like through cultural osmosis, through just being a fan of video games, was somebody that I recognize. I know he's also, I think, on the poster for the second one, which we don't need to get into.
3D.
Yeah, 3D. I'm debating if I want to talk about it when I do my spin-off podcast about watching 3D movies in 2D, but I might just like save myself from talking about that.
I mean, I think I gotta watch it and be on that series, Derek, because I think we need to see this. No, but this
All right.
movie, Silent Hill, is so good. I'm like, should I the sequel? It's a direct sequel with a lot of the same cast.
Yeah, that's the thing. I had the same experience and like looking it up and like I was like, because this is a movie. I'm like, this movie is not well regarded by critics. It's got a 33%, and I'm like, that one has an 8. And then I was like, okay. And then I like look and I'm like, well, a lot of cast comes back. I think they add Carrie Ann Moss, but like the creative team behind it does not come back.
Okay.
The director moves like I guess he was going to do it, but like I guess there was scheduling conflicts or something like that. And then this is kind of depressing. Roger Avery was in jail because he had a DUI, and manslaughter. So that's why he hasn't made a movie in a while, and is now doing podcasts with Quentin Tarantino. But
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's why he did not come back. So yeah, so they just got it would just and with that one I was just like, it feels like you work so hard to get to a level where you can make a video game and do it the right way and get these people who really care about it involved and do it for all the right reasons, and then the sequel comes out and it's just the same shit that they've been doing. It's just the same, just like, let's get Angelina Jolie in there and fucking have her do saving the world because the planets are about to line, or where the fuck that movie was about. Like, it's just the same bullshit, And that's why I was like, I'm not even gonna take the time to watch this.
It's just like, I just remember, spoilers for the sequel, that like there's like at this time in movies, everything had to have a slow motion fight sequence. And like Pyramid Head gets in a slow motion like fight sequence sword fight with another monster, and I was just like, yeah, this ain't it. But can we talk about the climax of Silent Hill?
Yes, please.
Because like horror movies, I think endings are tough for a good horror movie.
Yes.
Because it's like, you killed a monster. Okay, now I'm not scared driving home because I know the monster is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's no good.
Right.
Oh, the monster kills all the protagonists. Well, it doesn't feel good either. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be extremely effective. But you want your audience to walk out being scared and glad they've seen it.
Yes.
And so some horror movies, I think it's pretty rare, honestly, will have the sort of twist of like, you, the audience, end up rooting for the monster.
Mm.
And that's, very much like every Godzilla sequel. It's like, oh, he's a good guy now. We know what you came here to see. Let's root for the monster. Silent Hill, I never imagined that they would go for a root for the monster kind of ending. But this religious cult, you've now witnessed them rotisserie cooking a little helpless girl whose only crime was getting sexually assaulted. They slow roast Sybil, the cop, in a scene that goes way longer than I expected it to.
Yeah.
You keep waiting for the
her
camera.
Fucking face melts, literally.
Yeah. You see the bone. And the actress who plays her is selling it. And you see her like reacting to the gas and the smoke and the smell of her own melting flesh. And you're just begging the camera to cut away. You're like, I get what's happening. Let me stop watching. The camera doesn't cut away until her clothes ignites. And this little girl's watched the whole thing. And so have you. Like, you're very much horrified with the characters now. And then our hero Rhoda Mitchell shows up and gets stabbed through the heart because she's speaking against the church, right?
Mhm.
But she at this point has made a deal with the devil and has smuggled the evil presence of Silent Hill into the one
Mhm.
place it could never get, which was the church. And there's this very on the nose, very corny shot that I loved of Rhoda Mitchell. Remember this scene, this shot? She's clutching the knife and she's standing in front of this portrait of a witch hunt, and
Yes.
the barbed wire tendrils of the devil itself is rising up behind her. And then the demon proceeds to barbed wire rape people.
Yeah.
It barbed wire tentacle rapes a woman to death. If that's not the most disturbing sentence you've ever heard, what the hell are you watching?
That was the one point where I was like, you didn't need that. Like, I was like,
Oh,
that was
really?
the
That was
one
a
point
bridge
when
too
I was
far for
like,
Derek?
I was like, cool. She's getting like attacked by the barbed wire and stuff like that, and like all these things are happening. I get like it's supposed to be poetic justice or whatever for what happened to the little girl, but like I was like, that was the one point where I was like, that I don't think they'd put that in 2024. Like, I don't think that they would put that, like everything, like when she's getting like strung up and stuff like that. Cool, but I didn't like that they gendered it in that violent way.
Okay.
It didn't sit with me, and I won't say that I sided with the bad guys at all. I was still like, good, fuck you guys, you get it, you're getting your just desserts. And I do think you're right. That is something that tends to happen in horror movies, especially horror sequels. Like, that's why by like Michael Myers 5, he was like, he's a good guy. He's just killing because of a curse, whatever. But
But
yeah, no, go on.
no, yeah, I just find it really funny that this is like one of the most disturbing movies, and like the fact that it went a bridge too far. Is that good horror? Because I think that really good horror makes you uncomfortable and it upsets you. And because then if you're upset, you're kind of more connected to the story and the characters because they're freaking, you know what I mean? They're upset. And then the movie ends and it's kind of confusing. It kind of has a fake out ending. Can we get into that?
Yeah, yes, please, because that is, I think, one of the most fascinating things about the movie is its ending, because, like you said, a lot of horror movies, they don't really know how to end because you want to leave on like a horror scary note, and a lot of them just do the ripoff of Carrie, right? They do the like, hey, there's a monster, is it real? I don't know, or he's gonna be back for a sequel. Like they do the like even like one of the first movies to do that after Carrie, Friday the 13th Part 1 was like when the first actual canonical appearance of Jason jumping out of the wall. They're like, we just fucking ripped off Carrie. This is one of the few movies that I feel like goes this different, very bittersweet route. So I don't know if you want to describe that.
Yeah, so at first it looks like the protagonist's plan of making a deal with the devil has worked out and they're leaving the church and they've made it. And they repeat that very cringy, like, mother is God in the eyes of a child. It's like, in case there was any doubt about the symbolism of this movie, like the camera will full on linger on Bible verses and characters will look at the camera and tell you the theme. So don't worry. Don't worry about breaking your brain on this one.
Yeah.
But they're leaving. And now the broken down roads that were formerly trapping them in this hellish town are suddenly repaired. And they can drive back into the real world and they drive all the way home. But you realize, the audience, that the world is still really foggy and strangely empty. And the characters don't seem to fully realize. And we know that they're not back because you get that another shot of Sean Bean in his house sensing their presence, but they're not there.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, you have the real world, you have hell, and then in between is the foggy limbo world. where people are kind of trapped and awaiting their sentencing or awaiting their unfinished business or whatever. And those are the ghostly people who were in this cult. They were already dead, and
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
their hell. But the little girl keeps doing these weird looks at the camera to let you know that she's not normal. The demon's in her. And now, because of this deal that the protagonist struck, the demon is now in our world. And to me, the implication is that because I guess the sequel, right, the main character of the sequel is Sharon. So she has to make it out. But Rhoda Mitchell, I don't think their character ever actually got out of Silent Hill.
See that's why another problem I have with the sequel is like it's such a great ambiguous fucking ending, right?
Mhm.
It's because it's like, oh, they've gotten out, but you're like watching and you're like, what's happening here? And because like you say, they're still in this ghostly, foggy, ethereal world. And just like when Sean Bean's character, her husband Christopher, was actually at Silent Bill, and he's like, he's like, I could feel her, because
Yeah.
they were like in alternate realities or what do you want to call it in the same location. He like he's had a traumatic experience. He's just kind of like falls asleep on the chair from like exhaustion, and then he wakes up. Like they come back into the house, and he fucking wakes up, and he's like, I can feel them there. So I never took it as like this evil made its way back. It's like they're like in limbo. They're not in hell in Silent Hill anymore, but they're also, it's not a happy ending. It's a bittersweet ending. They've escaped, but not completely. And I just love that it leaves it with that ambiguous ending. And I also just love how fucking well it's shot. And it cuts back and forth between this dark, gloomy cinematography that we've been seeing for the whole movie. It's got this very blue tint on it. And then it goes to this Sean Bean shit, which is shot like fucking before sunrise or something. Like it's so fucking cool. Like, and they just kind of like, they both feel each other and they're both kind of like, what's happening now? And then it just kind of ends. And you're like, shit, dude. I'm always on the fence when it comes to ambiguous endings. Sometimes I feel like they can be a little too cutesy. And I think the first time I saw this, it did rub me a little bit the wrong way. I was like, what a fucking cop out. But after having sat with it and rewatched it, I do like that ambiguous ending. And I wouldn't want to watch a sequel that ruins that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, if you're going with the story of the sequel, and full disclosure, I haven't seen it since it came out because I did not like it. But I assume since Sharon is in the real world with real people, that's not really her daughter that is in that fog world at the end. That's really Rhoda Mitchell's character. She basically sacrificed herself so that Sharon could get out. And that's Alessa. That's the demon, like entirely.
Okay. That's an interesting take I had not even thought of. Okay.
Yeah.
So so her daughter gets out and then she's with the demon in this
But doesn't
purgatory.
know. She doesn't realize she's with the demon. She thinks that's her daughter.
That is fascinating. That's another interesting take. And
Yeah.
that's another reason why I love an ending like this, or like a whole movie like this where there is so much just kind of ambiguity and vaguity, and you can like take it a number of different ways. Someone can tell you a theory that you hadn't even thought of, but it makes total fucking sense, and you kind of changes your perspective. And there's not one right or wrong answer, but there's a lot of interesting ones.
Yeah, and the reason I think that the demon is in our world now is that the last shot of the movie is very interestingly this bush getting heavily rained on. And like we've seen a lot of elements in this movie. We've seen fire, we've seen fog, we've seen, like ash, but like we've never really seen rain. And I was like, what does the rain represent? Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but in my head, like rain precedes the fog. So this is where our world's gonna start becoming Silent Hill. But I don't know. I think the key with an ambiguous ending is that it can't just be true or false, yes or no.
Right.
Did they make it out? You decide. Well, there's only two options. He made it or he did, and you're being lazy. If it's poetic and cerebral and weird and it gives you room to play a little bit, I think that's what's fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also, if the movie has been very straightforward up to this point, and then it's ambiguous, it's a cop-out. But if it's a movie that has kind of had these vagaries, the ambiguities, these things that are left up to the imagination, and the ending is in lockstep with that, I think it works a lot better, which this obviously did.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of Silent Hill endings are very ambiguous and strange like that. And you're like, well, story's over. I feel like there's other problems, but
Yeah.
credits are rolling, you know?
Mhm.
And that's just, I mean, I think that just kind of sums up my love for this movie is that, like, I don't know how I missed it or forgot it, but there is so much love for the games. The camera angles, there's a scene where she wakes up in a bowling alley. It means nothing to the story, but Silent Hill fans know a very memorable scene in a bowling alley that looks exactly like it. She checks the map. She checks her inventory. She actually goes door to door. This is a key part of every Silent Hill game is that most doors are locked or broken. You see her trying all the doors. I'm like, this is so Silent Hill. Like, to the point that towards the end of the movie, when they do the exposition dump to get to the climax, my brain was like, oh, cutscene. Oh, God, this is a movie. It's all a cutscene. Like, but yeah, I don't know. This movie deserves better than it got. And a lot of movies got better than it deserved. So justice for Silent Hill.
Yep. Well, that's why I was like, I'm really glad that I got certified video game podcaster expert on somebody who knows these games a lot better than I could. And I will say, like, I love when a movie does that. All the stuff you mentioned, where it's like waking up in a bowling alley or like checking the doors. Those are just things I saw happen in the movie. They're not like weirdly. The attention isn't like weirdly drawn to it, like some things in Marvel can sometimes do. You know, where it's like if you don't get the reference, it's like, what even was that? It feels organic and natural. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, I imagine someone who doesn't know about the X-Men watching the end of the Marvels and being like, "Who's this blue guy?" Like he's just walking in like but no, yeah, the Easter eggs don't insist that you like do your homework. It's just like what's that acronym? It's like IYYK, if you know, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the Easter eggs are very much a if you know, you know, and I think that's the best kind of Easter egg.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, but JMO, before I get you out of here, I wanted to ask you. I'm going to ask all of my guests this on this series. Do you have a favorite video game adaptation? It can be a show if you want, or a movie, whichever you prefer.
This is dirty. I'm mad at you. He did not give me any time to think about this in advance.
Nope, I
On the
just sprung it
spot.
on you.
Yeah, yes. The Sonic the Hedgehog series, I think, has just been such an unexpected delight. Such a fun story of fans saving a movie's reception by being vocal, but then also embracing it so much when it actually comes out. I think sometimes fandom can be so entitled and so picky that, like, you know, it's like, well, what have you done for me lately, movie series? And it's like, entertained you for free, shut up.
Yeah.
But those movies, Jim Carrey and all the actors who are doing the voice actors for the Sonic the Hedgehog series, it's just an endorphin machine. I don't know how you can watch those movies and not smile by the end of it. And so I guess if I can just talk about one super quick, don't sleep on Knuckles. Knuckles is this really delightful. It's like a 4-part or 6-part miniseries, but every episode's half an hour. So like you do the whole thing, you're in and out in less than 3 hours. And it's this strangely poignant metaphor about Jewish families and bowling.
Yeah, I remember that because I didn't finish it, but I watched the first few episodes. It was like, and like Knuckles is like an honorary member of the tribe in it somehow.
Yeah, it's super cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about so do I not ask you because you're gonna do all of these and decide at the end or
Well, I will agree with you because yeah, I try. I'll probably mention one each episode, and yeah, for this one, I will agree with you that I really like the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. I think especially the second one. You know, I think the second one, like the first one's a good movie, but it's the second one when they introduce and it's not just. It's the first one's just Sonic and the humans, right? And then Robotnik, but even then he's still kind of like he's got hair and stuff like that. It's Jim Carrey doing his Jim Carrey thing, but the second one, it really is like, okay, cool. We've got Tails, we've got Knuckles. Jim Carrey is in full Dr. Eggman with like the crazy beard and the bald head and doing all the stuff, you know, and it's just like you would never get fucking Idris Elba to be in a fucking Knuckles TV show like 10 years ago. That's insane. But now it's like you know, it's so good. I really enjoy the second one, and I am so excited for the third one because I love Sonic games. I'm a big fan of them. The one that was really my Sonic game was Sonic Adventure Battle 2, which was the introduction to Shadow. And so to get like to see Shadow in a movie, once again, voiced by Keanu fucking
So
Reeves.
good. Bullseye. How do you do it?
And I don't know if you've seen, like, because I know you and I both try to avoid spoilers.
Haven't seen it.
But I'll just say there's a production still. And
yeah.
all it is because in the flashbacks, you played Sonic Battle 2, right?
All of it. I've played almost every Sonic game.
Because it's like Eggman's like grandfather or whatever, and it's just Jim Carrey in old man, like he looks like Eggman, but like the old version of it, and you're just like, fuck yeah, they're doing it, they're going there. I cannot wait. I'm so hyped.
Especially since in Sonic Adventure 2, I'm pretty sure the sprite for the Grandpa Robotnik was just Robotnik with gray instead of brown. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like, that's again, you can think it looks all cheap and funny, but like it's intentional. It's the language of the movie. They know the language of those movies now. Silent Hill knew the language of Silent Hill. It's just, you love to see it. Good stuff.
Yeah. We're gonna get to hear Keanu Reeves say Maria.
You think they're gonna kill Maria? They got to.
They got to. They got to. Yeah. But yeah, man, that was great. I think we've really covered we talked a lot about how great this movie was and how important it was for getting to movies like Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So thank you so much for coming on. One more time, if you want to let anybody out there know anything about you or anything about your podcast.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me. It's always fun. I hope I get to come back. You're a blast. Your podcast is just the gift that keeps on giving. I just listened to your Return to Oz special, so it was nice to talk about something more lighthearted like Silent Hill.
That's fair.
Yeah.
No fucking wheelers in this one.
No wheelers in this one, but that's very Silent Hill coded. Like the wheelers, you put a little rust on the wheelers from Return to Oz, you're all set. So yeah, my name is, I go by JMO. I'm one half of the Old Switcheroo. My friend Mike and I are trying to play all the games in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro Catalog, which covers Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo 64, just lots of 90s and early 2000s Nintendo games, and a bunch of really weird, obscure ones. So like I said, you can check out the episode with Derek and Karosh, and Derek was also on our Pokemon Snap episode. And we are having a couple of fun themed episodes coming out soon. We're going to have a Castlevania episode and The Zombies Ate My Neighbors for our little spooky season. So thanks again so much for having me. And it's just, I hope to see you at my site. Hope to see you again, Derek, in a future collab.
Yeah, we have to make it happen. And we're going to go, of course, like as we said, go watch the Silent Hill remake IRL when it comes out.
We're doing it.
But yeah, thank you everybody for listening. If you came over here from the Old Switcheroo, this has obviously been underrated. So if you want to give us a follow, rate us 5 stars. That helps out the show a lot. You can find all the stuff on underratedmoviepodcast.com, Underrated Movie Podcast on all the socials. And if you want even more from me, you can check out the Patreon, where you get episodes a week early. Subscribers at a $3 level will get a bonus podcast. It's going to be starting up soon. The one talking about the 2D movies watching, or 3D movies watching them in 2D. It's going to be called Across the Second Dimension. Might have to have you on to talk about the Silent Hill remake for that. So look forward to that. Check that out. And I will say, next episode, we mentioned Karosh a couple times. Or not at next episode, the one following that. He is actually going to be on this miniseries. I will say, next episode, we're going to be talking about Ace Attorney, the Takeshi Miike film from Japan. And then the episode after that, which happens to be, this was another timing thing I planned out, episode 150 for our video game series, we're going to be talking about Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, me and Karosh. Put it on your calendars. So, and then we're going to be wrapping up the series with Gran Turismo. So, hope you guys stick around for the rest of this mini series, because I'm having a blast with it so far.
That's really episode 150.
Yep.
Well done. The fates aligned.
I was like, I can make this work. I can do this. You know, it was like the little meme with like Walter White doing the little drops or whatever. That's how I felt, like lining everything up.
Beautiful.
But thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you all next time.